Hi, I'm Stanley. I raised my daughter with everything I had, and yet, at her wedding, she looked me dead in the eyes and screamed, "This man is a disgrace." But what broke me wasn't the insult. It was the years I spent in silence, the lies I ignored, the home they sold behind my back, the contract I never signed. I thought I was protecting her. Turns out, I was the last to know. And now, I want you to hear everything. I buttoned up my jacket slow that morning, an old navy blue suit that barely hugged my shoulders right anymore. Still, it was the best I had. I'd pulled it out the night before, pressed it myself. Didn't trust the cleaners not to mess it up. I even shined my shoes, the ones I hadn't worn since my retirement party. I looked in the mirror and thought, "You clean up all right, old man." I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking into something good. My daughter Emily was getting married. My little girl, who used to climb up in my lap with her stuffed bear and whisper secrets. I raised her after the divorce, just me and her. Did the best I could. Gave up things so she wouldn't have to. There wasn't a birthday I ever missed, not once. I hadn't been involved much in the wedding planning. She said she was too busy, that her fiancé's family had it handled. I figured that's just how young folks do things now. Independent. I wasn't going to press. But I had received the invitation, or what I thought was an invitation. The morning was crisp in Milwaukee. I parked a little ways down from the church, clutched the envelope in my jacket pocket like a talisman. I even chuckled when I remembered what I used to call her, Bug. She hated it in high school but never made me stop. That was ours. The church was like something out of a magazine. White hydrangeas, soft music from a string quartet, people in suits that probably cost more than my car. I nodded at a few guests. Some looked at me, too long. Their faces didn't say welcome. They said, "Why is he here?" I walked up to the usher, asked where I should sit. He looked confused, then scanned a printed chart on a clipboard. Name? Stanley Morgan, father of the bride. His brow furrowed. I don't see you listed. Let me check something." He disappeared. I stood there, awkward, heart tapping in my chest. Eventually, another usher came back and said, "You can stand in the back, sir. The seating's tight." I didn't argue. I stood behind the last row, pretending it didn't sting. I told myself it was just a mix-up. Maybe Emily forgot to add me, or someone else handled the list. These things happen, right? I spotted her across the room laughing with her bridesmaids. She looked happy, glowing. My heart swelled. She didn't see me yet, but I was there. That was what mattered. The music shifted. Everyone stood. Emily walked down the aisle, and that's when it happened. I raised my hand, just a little. Not even a wave, more like a "Hey, I'm here, Bug." She froze, mid-step, eyes locked on mine. Her smile vanished. Then she said it, loud, clear, like a slap across the face. "This man is a disgrace." The room fell into a vacuum. Gasps, whispers. I heard someone say, "What?" Someone else pulled out their phone. I didn't move, couldn't. My hand was still raised. She turned her face away, like I was some stranger who'd ruined her day. The officiant stammered, confused. The music faltered. Her fiancé looked panicked. And then, someone from the groom's side came toward me. "Sir, please, you need to leave." "What's going on?" I asked, voice hollow. "She warned you not to come," someone muttered near the front. I was escorted out, not pushed, not dragged, but walked, like I didn't belong. Outside, the wind felt colder. I got to my car and sat there. Didn't start it, just sat. I thought about her first day of school, how she cried until I stayed on the sidewalk, waving, the lunches I packed, the nights I skipped dinner so she'd have enough. How did we get here? What did I do? Was this about the divorce? Her mother had remarried quick. Maybe she rewrote the past for Emily. But to humiliate me like that, in front of everyone? No, that wasn't just oversight. That was intentional. Someone wanted me gone. Someone made her believe I didn't deserve to be there. I opened the glove box and pulled out the envelope again, just to see if maybe I'd imagined it all. It was there. My name, the date, the address. Then I flipped it over. Tiny handwriting on the back. "Don't come. You're not wanted." I hadn't noticed it before, hadn't looked. It was written faint, like whoever did it hoped I'd miss it. Or maybe hoped I wouldn't. My hands trembled. I placed the envelope on the passenger seat. This wasn't just about being forgotten. This was a message, not one from my daughter. No, this came from someone else. But they were about to learn. I may be old, I may be quiet, but I'm not blind, and I'm not going to disappear. I didn't remember driving home. I only remembered the way the envelope felt in my hand, creased, cheap, and now soaked with the weight of those words scribbled on the back. Don't come. You're not wanted. I sat in my driveway for a while before cutting the engine. The porch light was still on. I'd left it that way, hoping to return with something to smile about. Instead, I returned like a man who'd buried a part of himself in the middle of a church he had no place in. The front door creaked like it always did. No one to greet me, no TV humming, no smell of food, just silence. My house always had this hush to it since Emily left. But tonight, it was heavier. The kind of silence that doesn't just sit with you, it settles into your bones. I turned on one lamp in the living room. Dim, amber light painted the walls. I didn't need much. My movements were automatic. Fill the kettle, wait for the click, pour the hot water over a bag of plain tea. No sugar, no lemon. Just hot water and something to keep my hands busy. I sat down in the recliner, same one where I used to read to her. She'd curl up under a blanket, her little head resting on my shoulder. That chair had grooves from both of us. Now it just groaned under my weight. When did I stop being her hero? The question echoed. I hadn't done anything to deserve today. Or had I? I tried to replay moments, trace where the shift began, but it was all fuzzy, like a dream you try to hold on to after waking up. I stood slowly, walked over to the old cabinet in the hallway. Behind a stack of books, I pulled out a wooden box, covered in dust. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were the pieces of a life I used to think mattered. Crayon drawings, stick figures of us holding hands, a report card she cried over because of 1B. Birthday cards with shaky handwriting that read, "Love you, Daddy." I almost closed it again, but something slid forward. An envelope, yellowed with age. For Stanley, only if she ever turns cold. My ex-wife's handwriting. I knew it instantly. My breath caught. I sat back down, letter trembling in my hand. The seal was unbroken. I hesitated, then tore it open. Her words were clear, sharper than I remembered her ever being. Stanley, if you're reading this, it means something went wrong. I don't know how, but I can feel it in my gut. If Emily ever grows distant, please remember, it's not just you. Silas has always had this way of slipping into people's hearts with a smile, but there's a part of him I never trusted. He wants to be the only father figure she remembers. Watch him. He doesn't erase with hate. He replaces with charm. Silas. I hadn't spoken his name aloud in years. I leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The man who married my ex-wife a year after we split. He never said a bad word to me, but that was his game. He didn't fight me. He faded me. Little by little, from her birthdays, her school meetings, even holidays, I thought Emily was just growing up. But now, I remembered one Christmas, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Emily had called, said they were going to Florida last minute with family. She sounded unsure. I told her to go, of course. We'll celebrate next week, I said. We never did. I thought of all the moments I chalked up to life being busy. Maybe it wasn't just life. Maybe it was Silas constantly inserting himself, filling spaces I used to belong in. He gave her gifts. I gave her memories. He gave her polished words. I gave her quiet presence. Maybe that was my mistake. I stayed quiet too long. I picked up the letter again. Her mother had seen it. She knew Silas needed to be watched. I hadn't watched. Back then, I was too tired, too broken from the divorce. I figured I'd step back so Emily could adjust. I didn't want to be the bitter ex-husband. But maybe in doing that, I let someone else rewrite the story of who I was, and now my daughter believed it. If someone stole her heart away from me, I'd get it back. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Later that night, the house was dark again. Just me, my tea gone cold, and a heavy letter resting on the coffee table. But something wouldn't let me sleep. I grabbed my laptop from the kitchen drawer. It still took forever to boot up, whirring like it needed encouragement. I typed in Silas Bradford. At first it was the usual, business directories, a LinkedIn page, smiling photos in a suit. But then I saw it. A headline, buried under a small newspaper link. Local businessman involved in custody meddling suit from 2012, I clicked. And in that moment, something cracked. I didn't sleep much, a couple hours maybe. When I opened my eyes, the same headline stared back at me from the laptop on the coffee table. Local businessman involved in custody meddling suit from 2012. I clicked through the article again, this time slower, reading every line like it might vanish if I blinked. Silas had been accused of manipulating a teenage boy to turn against his father during a messy custody case. No criminal charges were filed, just sealed family court proceedings and a brief mention of psychological coaching tactics. The article quoted the boy's aunt, who said the kid had once adored his dad, until Silas became involved. The name wasn't the same, but the pattern was. I sat up straighter, grabbed my notebook. I started jotting down questions like I was back on the clock, working a case. What did Silas show Emily? Why was I shut out after she moved in with them? How early did this start? The pages filled quickly. My handwriting was shaky, but my mind was clear. It was like pulling on a thread that had been knotted for years. And now, finally, it was starting to give. I closed the laptop, stood up, and stretched my back. The house creaked with me. I needed to get out, grab some coffee, think with fresh air in my lungs. I slid on my coat, grabbed my keys, and that's when the phone buzzed. Voicemail. Unknown number. I played it, expecting a scam or wrong number. Instead, I heard her voice. If my dad finds out what you told me back then, he'll never forgive you. Emily. My heart skipped. Then another voice, firm and low. He won't. We buried that years ago. Remember what I showed you? That wasn't fake. Silas. It cut off right there. Static. Then silence. I stood frozen in my entryway, the phone pressed to my ear long after it ended. I played it again. Then again. My hands were sweating. The timestamp. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before the wedding. She was conflicted. She had doubts. Some part of her still questioned what she'd been told. And she had been told something, shown something. I sat down hard on the nearest chair. A dozen thoughts crashed into each other in my head. What did he show her? What did he say? And why did it work? The voicemail wasn't meant for me. Someone screwed up. Someone on their side. And I intended to make the most of it. Notebook back in hand, I added a new section. Voicemail. Proof of emotional manipulation? Underlined it twice. Then drew a line to the name I'd written the night before. Silas Bradford. From a name I once saw as a nuisance to something else entirely. My gut burned. Not fear, determination. If Emily had even a sliver of doubt, there was still a path back to her. I wasn't chasing love. I was reclaiming truth. I drove to my regular cafe, the one where the waitress knew my name but never asked questions. The place smelled like burnt toast and old wood. I sat in my usual booth and ordered black coffee. No cream, no time for comfort. Pulled out my notes and started building a timeline. Year Emily changed schools, around when Silas came into the picture. Time she stopped calling me Dad and started saying Stanley. About 6 months later. First time she skipped our Christmas lunch. Right after Silas suggested she spend more time with her real family. Lies aren't always shouted. Sometimes they're whispered. Subtle. Layered over time like paint until the truth is buried underneath. A TV played behind the counter, some morning talk show discussing estranged parents. One line hit me hard. Lies aren't just told. They're planted, watered, and harvested. I stared at my coffee and muttered, and now it's harvest season. On my way out, I left a tip, nodded at the waitress, and headed for my car. That's when the message came in. Blocked number. 1 sentence. Stop digging or you'll regret it. I looked up from the screen. I scanned the lot. A couple of teenagers in hoodies by the gas station. A woman loading groceries. Nothing out of place, but someone was watching. I tightened my grip on the phone. My jaw clenched. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about something much bigger, something they never thought I'd fight back against. The message sat on my phone like a stain I couldn't scrub out. Stop digging or you'll regret it. I played it again and again. I didn't know who sent it, but I knew who it was meant to protect. Silas. I went into the study, closed the door behind me, and sat in the old leather chair I hadn't used much since retirement. That chair had seen better days, and so had I. I laid out everything I had, my notes, the article, the voicemail transcript. I stared at the scribbles, the crossed-out thoughts, the arrows drawn between names and years. This was bigger than a wedding. This was about a pattern, a slow, deliberate rot that had been working its way through my daughter's love for years. This isn't just about me anymore, I muttered. I picked up the phone and dialed someone I hadn't talked to in years, Ben Carter. Used to work in family court before he got fed up with the politics and left to open a bait shop. He still knew the ropes. Ben, it's Stanley. I need to know if someone's influencing a child against a parent, emotionally, psychologically, but it's not a custody case anymore. What can be done? He was quiet for a long time before he said, document everything. If you can show a pattern, timing, behavior, any communication, it's not just a he said, she said anymore. But Stanley, this stuff gets ugly. You sure you're up for it? I looked around the room. My life wasn't flashy. No trophies on the walls, no legacy to flaunt, just four walls, a lot of quiet, and one daughter who used to think I hung the moon. I'm up for it, I said. After we hung up, I started jotting bullet points. What I knew, what I suspected, what I'd say to Silas when the time came. It wasn't going to be a shouting match. That man knew how to twist words. I needed to stay calm, cut straight. A couple hours later, I picked up the phone again. This time, I called Silas directly. He answered with that same slick voice I remembered from years ago. Too smooth. Stanley, what a surprise. You may think I'm the same man who sat quietly for years, I said, but that man doesn't exist anymore. He chuckled. All right, what's this about? I got a voicemail, I said. Your voice? Emily's voice. 2 weeks ago. I know what you told her. I know what you showed her. Silence. I also read about the 2012 case, I added. Same tactics, different name. And today I got a message threatening me to stop asking questions. He sighed like I was wasting his time. Stanley, you're not well. You're chasing ghosts. You're twisting things. If I am, I said, they're whispering the truth louder than you ever did. He paused. You always were dramatic. And you always underestimated quiet men. I took a breath. This is your one chance to step back. The next time we talk, I won't be asking. Then I hung up. By late afternoon, I was in my truck, parked a few houses down from Emily's place. I didn't want her to see me. That wasn't the point of this visit. I walked up the driveway when no one was looking and slid an envelope into her mailbox. Inside was a printed copy of the voicemail transcript and a short note. I don't want to fight. I want the truth. Someday when you're ready to hear it, I'll be here. I sat in the truck afterward, just watching. A few minutes passed, then Silas's car pulled in. He got out, spotted me down the street. We locked eyes. He didn't smile. Neither did I. I turned the key and drove off without a word. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Then I dreamed. Emily was 10 again, sitting at the kitchen table drawing on a napkin. She looked up at me and said, "You'll always be my safe place, Dad." I woke up with a throat like sandpaper and a fist clenched against my chest. Then I better start acting like one, I whispered. I got up, went to the study, opened my laptop, started researching. Family court filings. Psychological manipulation cases. I dug into everything I could find. Then I opened a new file on my desktop. I called it Custody of Truth. The next morning I was going through notes again when my phone rang. Blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice came through low, shaken. "Did you leave something in my mailbox?" My phone rang just as dust began sifting through my blinds. Blocked number. My heart skipped, but I answered. Emily's voice came, soft and shaky. "Dad, I saw the envelope. The transcript was real, right?" She swallowed. I never wanted to hurt you." I kept my tone gentle, steady. "You know the answer to that. You just need permission to believe it." She whispered something I couldn't hear. Tears. Then she ended the call, leaving silence on the line. I placed the phone down and paced across the living room. Years of quiet, years of swallowing words, thoughts, protests. For so long I told myself silence held peace. But peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from being heard. My father used to say silence can be noble, or it can be surrender dressed in politeness. I repeated it aloud as though reminding myself of who I am. If I won't fight now, then everything I was doing before was a lie. I sat at my desk, flicked on my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys. I began writing, not a rant, but a statement. One that would force truth into daylight. It had to stand firm, but not slap her away. Exposure with compassion, clarity, backbone. That night, under the dim lights of the community center's sign, I showed up. I signed up as SM with trembling hands. I carried only my speech notes and a deep resolve. When my name was called over the microphone, I stood slowly, took a breath. Faces in the crowd blurred, but I spoke. "This isn't a story about a wedding," I said. "It's about what—" It was just past 6 when the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened the door and saw a courier standing there with a clipboard, something in my gut pulled tight. He said my name, handed me an envelope, and walked away without another word. I tore the seal open at the dining table. Legal paper. Formal letterhead. Words jumped out like poison darts. Misappropriation. Unauthorized diversion of wedding funds. Criminal liability pending investigation. They were accusing me of stealing money from my own daughter's wedding. I sat back in the chair, stunned. I read it again, slower this time. They claimed I had siphoned off funds into my personal accounts. Detailed statements were attached, dates and amounts that were supposed to look familiar, some almost did. But something didn't sit right. I grabbed my old ledgers, the ones I kept in my office closet for years, flipped to the months leading up to the wedding. The records didn't match. Some of the listed expenses were fabricated. Others had my name tagged on entries I'd never authorized. And that's when it hit me. They had planted this. Silas and Damien. They anticipated I'd fight back, so they laid down a trap ahead of time. False trails. Forged transfers. I remembered Silas once saying, "Control isn't just power. It's making sure they never see you coming." Well, I saw them now. I whispered to myself, they think they can bury me with lies. They forget I know the builder's ledger. I got up, went to the safe in my study, pulled out the original receipts from the contractor, tax filings, and the physical copy of our old financial agreement. It wasn't about proving my innocence anymore. It was about proving their design. The next morning, it all blew up. My phone lit up before I even had coffee. Messages from old friends, former coworkers, neighbors. Some were just question marks. Others came straight. "Did you take money from Emily? I thought you were better than that. We always wondered why you were so quiet." I logged into social media. My name was there, not tagged, but woven into comments, whispers. "Her dad's a fraud. She deserves better than that, family." The apple fell far from that rotten tree. And just like that, decades of goodwill shriveled under the weight of a rumor. I stood in the living room, alone. I let it hit. The shame. The betrayal. Not just from them, but from the silence I let live too long. I remembered something my brother once said. "Be the nail or the hammer. The world don't reward stillness." I sat down and pulled out a contract from the back of my safe. One Damien had tried to rewrite a decade ago when my divorce finalized. One I never agreed to change. It listed every dollar I ever put into the shared account, every asset, every clause, and my signature at the bottom. He thought I forgot. He counted on me not keeping a copy. I scanned it, emailed it to a friend in the press. Then I called the front desk at Damien's law firm. "I want to speak to Damien. He's in a meeting. Tell him this. The contract was never voided. You can't accuse me of destroying what you tried to steal. I'm done being quiet." They called back 20 minutes later. Not Damien, his junior partner. "Mr. Miles, if you proceed with public exposure, you'll regret this revelation. I already regret trusting you people." Later that afternoon, I drove to the firm's building. Security stopped me at the entrance. No visitor credentials, no meeting, no exceptions. I didn't argue. Just pulled the envelope from my jacket pocket, placed it on the counter. "I need this delivered directly to Damien." Inside is a copy of the contract and a note. The guard looked at me like I was just another angry retiree wasting his time. I didn't care. I made sure he slipped it through the mail slot behind the glass door. Then I stepped back, glanced at the security camera, held eye contact, and nodded. On the front of the envelope, "Truth cannot be locked away." As I turned to leave, I saw Damien through the glass, coming out of his office. He stopped, stared, no smirk, no greeting, just two men who knew exactly what was now at stake. I didn't smile, just looked him dead in the eye. "We're just starting." Back home, the sky had turned dark. I sat at my desk and went through old voicemails, the ones I saved for no good reason. I found one from Silas, a short message about a logistics update months ago, but at the very end, barely audible, I heard something I hadn't noticed before. We buried the past so deep, no one would ever dig it up. It wasn't a warning, it was a declaration, and it wasn't about me. It was about what they did, what they covered, what they counted on never resurfacing. I stared at the blinking red light on the answering machine. Then I closed my eyes, fists clenched on my knees. They buried it. But I've still got the shovel. I lay awake long after midnight. The room was darker than usual, shadows clinging to corners, stretching across the walls like silent witnesses. My hand trembled slightly as I opened the nightstand drawer and pulled the file labeled "Custody of Truth." The contract I'd hidden, the emails I'd drafted, the notes I'd scribbled, they all lay there. A clause jumped at me one more time, something I'd missed. A line in Damien's favor, unsigned, planted. Illegitimate. It cut a jagged line through everything I believed. I whispered to myself, "Tonight I will stop being invisible. Tonight I expose them." I sat up, heart pounding, ready for the reckoning. I called Rick at 2 a.m. He answered groggily but alert. Over coffee in his office hours later, we laid it bare. He confirmed what I suspected, that clause was ghost-written, unsigned, legally invalid. It didn't have my consent, no witnessing, nothing. We drafted a press release, short, direct. I recorded a video message, not vengeance, but truth. I addressed Emily, Bug, the community, and Damien himself. I never signed that clause. It was slipped in the dead of night. I spoke with caution, control, but raw sincerity. That night, I drove to Damien's law firm. Windows dark, security lurking in the foyer. A door stood slightly ajar. I slipped inside, heart in my throat. In his inner office, I confronted him. I slammed the contract folder on the desk, open to the hidden clause. "Explain this," I said calmly but firmly. He recoiled, stuttered. "You're tearing apart what we built," he finally said. I leaned in. "You built on lies. I built with truth." Security stormed in. Damien barked orders. "Remove him." But I held my ground. I wouldn't be escorted like a suspect. Meanwhile, the press release hit. Local news stations picked it up. The footage aired, my recorded message, the contract clause, parts of the voicemail evidence. Damien squirmed under scrutiny. And Emily flickered on screen, her face shocked, confused, exposed. The community murmured. Social media lit up. When did he turn into the villain? He's not innocent. I watched from my study. I felt something I haven't felt in years. Vindication mingled with sorrow. This was dirty work, but it had to be done. The broadcast ended. My phone buzzed. Emily's name flashed. A live message. "I need to see this clause, now." I took a breath just as another call came in from Damien's firm demanding immediate retraction. I pressed my hand over the contract file, steadied myself. I was ready. The reckoning had begun. I sat in my study this morning, sipping weak coffee, watching the sun inch above rooftops. The broadcast from last night still played in my mind. Damien's face twisting under pressure, Emily's blurred image in the corner. I felt the air shift. Something fragile hung between what was said and what was possible. Then my phone buzzed. A text, simple. "I want to understand. Can we meet?" From Emily. My pulse raced. Was this trap or a bridge? I grabbed the folder I'd prepared, documents, receipts, contracts, all of it. I dressed, left the house, and drove to the local cafe where we used to share morning donuts years ago. I parked, heart hammering, waiting for what would come next. She arrived, her eyes rimmed, hair limp. We sat across from each other at a small table in the corner. The noise of coffee machines and chattering patrons filled the space between us. She said softly, "I'm sorry for how I treated you publicly." Her voice broke. I wanted to believe what I was told. Her apology felt like a drop of water in a dry well. She revealed how Damien's financial decisions began to feel off. Money missing, excuses, vague statements, and how she ignored them because she trusted him. Her certainty had blinded her. I opened the folder, laid out the unsigned clause, bank discrepancies, the timeline I drafted. I watched as her eyes flicked over page after page. Her chest rose, then stilled. After a moment, she fished her phone from her purse. She hesitated. Then she pressed play. Damien's voice filled the quiet, admitting he added the clause, "for insurance," in case the old man changes his mind. His tone was casual, cold. Emily's recorded voice followed. "You said I'd never regret trusting you." She swallowed hard. "I recorded this weeks ago," she said, voice trembling. "He was too arrogant to notice." I leaned back, the chair creaking. My throat tightened. This changed everything. The confession once hidden, now free. The game board shifted. She looked at me, tears glistening. "I was afraid of losing my place in his world, and I lost you instead." The weight of those words pressed down hard. I swallowed, cleared my throat. "You never had to choose, but now that you've seen it, what do you want to do?" Her eyes filled. She asked for forgiveness, not just for that day, but for the years of distance. She touched my hand. We didn't fix everything, but it was a start. I told her plainly, "Truth comes first now. No more secrets." A minute later, her phone beeped. She looked at me, then typed fast. Then she looked up. "I need to talk to him." She pressed send. I watched the screen. "We need to talk, urgently." Her courage, fragile but real, rose. I felt something steady inside me. Not vindication, but purpose. I watched Emily slip out of the cafe. The weight in my chest was lighter. The path forward was broken and uneven, but it was ours. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's choosing to walk forward together, even when the scars are still fresh. A week passed, not quickly, not easily. Each day crawled, not from dread, but from unfamiliar quiet. Damien moved out the day after Emily confronted him with the recording. He didn't shout, didn't beg, just packed a single bag and left like a man who knew the game was up. He didn't even look her in the eye. That told me everything. Back home, I sat in my usual chair, the one by the window that catches the morning sun just right. The silence used to claw at me. Now, it sat with me like an old friend. There was a stillness I hadn't felt in years. I looked out, birds landing on the fence, wind nudging the leaves. No phone calls, no accusations, no shouting, just stillness. Some silences speak louder than anger. And in that quiet, you hear yourself again. Saturday afternoon, I got a text. "Emily, dinner tomorrow, backyard, just us. You coming?" I stared at the screen for a while, then typed, "Yes." The next day, I pulled into her driveway right at 5:00. She met me at the gate. No makeup, hair in a loose bun. Her eyes looked tired but not hollow like before. In the backyard, the table was simple. Plastic plates, iced tea, fried chicken like her mother used to make. Her kids were running around barefoot, chasing bubbles. One of them, Lily, the youngest, held up a little cardboard sign with crayon marks. "Welcome back, Grandpa." My chest tightened. We didn't say much at first. We didn't need to. I just watched. Watched her laugh, watched the kids bicker, watched the sun dip below the neighbor's fence line. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. After dinner, she poured us both a glass of lemonade and led me to the side yard. No one followed. It was just the two of us. "I filed a complaint," she said. "Damien's firm. And I started seeing someone, a therapist." Her voice didn't shake this time. I nodded. Then I spoke. "You asked me once why I stepped back, why I didn't fight harder." I paused, watching a leaf twist in the wind. "I wasn't angry at you. I was afraid. Afraid that if I pushed too hard, I'd break something in you I couldn't fix. So I chose silence." She looked at me, eyes wide. I continued, slow and steady. "I was at your graduation. Back row. baseball cap on. I was there when you danced in the Nutcracker, sat in the balcony. I sent flowers every birthday, under the name Secret Admirer. It wasn't about hiding. It was about not making your life harder than it already was. Tears welled in her eyes. You never gave up, did you? No, I said. I just waited until you were ready. She hugged me. It wasn't tight, wasn't dramatic. It was real. Solid. Later she asked, would you ever consider moving closer? We've got the guest house. I shook my head. No need. I'll be here every Sunday. You keep the porch light on. We made a deal. Sunday dinners, game nights when the kids were free. No promises, just presents. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering with less pain. It's knowing you can't change the past, but you can stop letting it define every tomorrow. That night, I stayed longer than I planned. Fixed a flat on my granddaughter's bike, laughed when she smeared grease on her cheeks like war paint. Driving home, the road felt lighter somehow. The radio low, the windows cracked just enough. Life doesn't give do-overs, but sometimes it gives second chances.